Settle in, young children. You're with Julian on the Brown Note and an exhausting, very long review of Big Star's Sister Lovers in my infrequent series called Gone But Forgotten, where it's usually an album but sometimes a band, and is the record or band or film even sometimes that was either denied classic status on release or has fallen out of the conversation. And just doesn't get mentioned anymore. And I did toy about featuring this album in this segment because it did get critical acclaim. It just didn't at the time. It was years later, and it in that whole era of the 90s jangly indie guitar music like Teenage Fan Club and so on, and the REM era, they got a lot of kudos. They reformed. They ended up playing festivals for the rest of their life. I think the band leader, Alex Chilton, who started in the band The Box Tops, who sung The Letter, an amazing single, massive hit single in, I think, 1967 or something like that, featured in the movie Once Upon a Time in America. Alex Chilton, who was by far the band leader, got together with Jody Stevens on drums. And for the first album of Big Star, Chris Bell, who himself became a cult figure in music, tragic life and a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol, and ended up killing himself in a car crash, and Andy Hummel on bass. The main pairing being really the Jody Stevens, Alex Chilton pairing, and they invented a musical genre called power pop, which I saw a piece saying, next to the Velvet Underground, Big Star have probably influenced more alternative guitar bands than anyone other than the Velvet Underground, which is a big thing. What is power pop? I mean, some of the bands that have professed a debt to Big Star are Kiss. So even Kiss say, we're massively indebted to Big Star. REM, which is a more jangly version. Cheap Trick are probably almost the closest to pure power pop. And if you ever watch That 70s Show, that song that opens it is a Big Star song from their first or second album, which was then covered, I think, literally by Cheap Trick, and that's the version that they used on most seasons of That 70s Show. And into the 90s, when it really became the rebirth of this infatuation with Big Star, which is where I got on board. And this is when I got the album, because I had Bandwagon-esque by Teenage Fan Club, and I kept seeing, people referencing this mysterious album. So the career of Big Star is really eerily analogous to the career of British folk icon Nick Drake. Both of these acts happened sort of between 1970 and 1975. They both released two hugely acclaimed, incredibly influential albums that other musicians loved, that sold 4 copies, and then, I think both in 1975, made an incredibly depressing shout back to their disillusionment with a third album that was much, much darker in the case of Nick Drake, the very bleak Pink Moon, and with the case of Big Star, the album that's called Third/Sister Lovers. So the reason that I include it in this Gone But Forgotten list is when the album was made, and this is almost like an amorphous album where the real thing has never existed. The sessions were cut by the studio, and neither Alex Chilton or Jody Stevens wanted to continue Big Star. And that was in 1975. It was never released. There was never a track listing. In 78, the record label put out a version with their own thoughts on the track listing. Then again for a second release a few years later, and then again for a third release. And then the fourth release around 92 is the one that I've got, which is 19 tracks long. So there is no definitive version of this, which is kind of why I didn't put it in my other segment, Perfect Tens, because it never really was released. It's kind of this amorphous, ever-changing album. That said, I would give it 10 out of 10. There might be a couple of tracks from the very long version I've got, because I think I'd remove probably at least 2 tracks that just don't fit. They kind of bunched them all together on this one. But the other thing is it was denied classic status on release, and then whoever got into it in the 90s, it depends how old you are, but a lot of people nowadays just wouldn't even know who Big Star are, because it just isn't that kind of guitar music. The kind of alternative guitar music we get now is very sort of post-punk, spiky, angular, Squid, Black Midi, those kind of bands, but far out pop music, the likes of Teenage Fan Club, we don't really have. So I don't know that the currency would be as accepted now for this album. A lot of people might not have heard it, and it's a unique album. So they released 2 classic power pop albums which influenced absolutely hundreds of bands. We got record number 1, or number 1 record, Ironic. They were on the record label Stax, the legendary soul record label, who did not know what to do with them. So that came out in 72. Radio City, which is probably the better of the 2, both classic albums, both massive influences. That came out in 74, and the first time Sister Lovers came out, is that in space an actual album? Yeah, they did a studio album in 2005 when they did a comeback, which doesn't sound like it was great. But third / Sister Lovers, the Sister Lovers part comes from the fact that both Jodie Stevens and Alex Chilton were literally dating sisters at the time. So it's their third album, and there was never a defined title of the album. In fact, there are some people that say it's not really a Big Star album as much as it's an Alex Chilton album. But it was latently that the album's impact. It's become one of the most notorious downer albums of all time. One of the most notorious bleak albums of all time. And it deserves its reputation, but it's not bleak or down in, say, listening to either of the first 2 Joy Division albums. It's a very different kind of thing. I think it actually topped the list of the New Musical Express's saddest albums of all time. That's rubbish. It's not a sad album. It's a bitter, angry, hopeless record, yet riven with beauty and light and incredible songwriting. And one of the main parameters of the album is how sloppy and slapdash elements of the recording process are. I mean, there's what I assume are black female backing vocalists who, given the album I think was made in Memphis, would have been session people. And I just wonder what the hell they thought with this music when it actually came through in the way that it did. Because there's songs on there that are so bleak. But then there are incredibly gorgeous power pop guitar melodies on this album as well. So it isn't a power pop album like their first 2 albums, and it doesn't carry that influence. It's got an influence of its own in being a monument to dark albums or recording artists that are in dark places. And they were both, I think Alex Chilton was just over everything. He couldn't understand, like Nick Drake, I've just made 2 classic albums. Everyone thinks they're brilliant, and no one's bought them. And I'm just sick of it all. And I think he was indulging a little bit. So I'll go through the review of this Gone But Forgotten. I can't actually look at the track listing, because the track listing on my one isn't there, so I'll have to wing it. The album opens with Kiss of Me. This is bad, isn't it? I should have remembered that my version isn't even listed on Wikipedia. I'll do as best as I can. I do know the album well, so let's see if I can actually get through. So it opens with Kiss of Me. I Want to White Out, I think is the opening line. It's a big stomping power pop song, but there's no real happiness. There's a real sort of determination, but there's no ebullience, which a lot of their previous music had. It's got kind of an anarchic arrangement musically as well, which reminded me of the fragmented way it all sort of collides together with David Bowie's Low, and a possibly analogous album to this album in some ways. The track that really does kick it off, and for me is the most representative of what's going on here, is Thank You Friends, the second track. Now, if you read the lyrics of Thank You Friends, I'm so grateful for all the things you helped me do. Thank you, friends, wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. You would get the opposite impression of this song. It's the delivery by Alex Chilton, which is sneering, bitter, sarcastic, that completely inverts the meaning of the song. He couldn't be angrier in his lyrics. It's very, very acidic and a brilliant song as well. Both the opening two are pretty much expert power pop songs. We really get into the submarine of hell with the third track, which is Big Black Car. It's interesting to see that that's not on one of the original releases. This is a real sort of down, like taking heroin and sinking into the depths to die in a submarine. It's the most sinking into the floor heroin song. It's very, very bleak. It sounds almost a little bit like Perfect Day by Lou Reed. Nowhere near as optimistic as that marginally optimistic song. Or even bands like Spiritualize, some of their most down tracks. The lyrics, nothing can hurt me, nothing can touch me, why should I care, driving's a gas, it ain't gonna last, I can't feel a thing. Beautiful piano, lovely guitar motifs on many of these tracks, particularly the quieter ones. And track 4, I assume, is Jesus Christ, which is a real shock. Jesus Christ, which is just like the gold-plated guitar riff from heaven. It's done in complete sincerity. It should be a main staple Christmas song. It's absolute pure joy. It's golden and shimmering and uplifting for some reason. And a great song again. It's like all of the opening songs are great. 5, we get a cover. This is an album with maybe 4 or 5 covers on it, on this iteration that's 19 minutes long. It's probably there's a couple of them that I'm a bit wary about, but I think the Femme Fatale one from the Velvet Underground, which is, you could make up Big Star, I guess, at this iteration from the Byrds, the Beatles, the Small Faces, the Kinks, and the Velvet Underground. And they funneled that through into bands like Kiss and Cheap Trick and R.E.M. So this is a cover of Femme Fatale. How do you make the Velvets sound even more heroin washed out than the Velvet Underground themselves? The difference in this very plaintive and actually quite grim reading of the song is I always got the impression that Nico in the original was singing from a point of beware of this woman, whereas Alex Chilton sounds like he has been the victim himself. It's very, very raw, which a few of these tracks are. Odana, I'm doing alright. Odana is track 6 on my version. Could have got my laptop out. Odana is another one. It isn't happy, but there are times in music so great and uplifting. The verses are great. The third verse actually gets spine tingling. Real power pop song. The opening line, I'd rather shoot a woman than a man. Very personal lyric. I think he has a few of these songs where he's name checking people around them. Absolutely fabulous. It's almost 50-50 mix of overwhelming ebullience and completely being worn out. And then we get into the 2 most famous songs on the album, the 2 most covered songs on the album. Lots of the songs have been covered. Holocaust is the darkest piano ballad I have ever heard. No, it's like a black hole where no light escapes from. I think of The Eternal by Joy Division as being comparably bleak. It is just like standing on a freezing cliff, being hounded by an Arctic tundra for the rest of your life. You're sitting down to dress, you're a mess. Absolute don't give a fuck vocals. No hope at all. The only song other than The Eternal by Joy Division that it reminds me of is Asleep by the Smiths, a beautiful death song as well. But that song actually made death feel like a warming, embalming, womb-like, nice feeling. Whereas this is just frigid coldness, interstellar space. Your mother's dead, she's in her bed. Ends on You're a Holocaust. How this is the most covered song on the album? Who the fuck wants to cover Holocaust? Who heard this album and thought, yeah, that's the one we'll cover? The bleakest song of all time, let's cover it. It's beautiful, it's grim beauty, like the darkest beauty. And that's followed by the other most famous and covered song, Kangaroo, which is been covered multiple times, most notably by Jeff Buckley in the 90s, who was another acolyte of Big Star. The setup of this song is totally different to Power Pop, which is kind of, 4/4 beat, chords in the right places. This is like space rock. Everything is all over the shop. The beats, the chords, the main stinging feedback guitar lines are all in random places. It doesn't have an arrangement that is really like anything else. Really disheveled and abstract, stunning song. And if you're a fan of cowbells, the second half of this song has some of the best cowbelling you'll ever hear. Strike It Noel. I'm doing all right on the song titles. Might be even the biggest power pop moment so far. Completely fabulous. The Do You Wanna Dance chorus with strings starts to make a big appearance on the album now. I think the miserableness is on hold for a little bit. And it's almost like the music is so pretty here that it actually lifts his spirits. Track 10 is the one that is done by see, I'm flicking through several versions. For You. Now this is a song I'd lead off the album because it's the only one that's sung by Jody Stevens, but the mood isn't the same as all of the other tracks. It's a bit jarring. It's a great song, and it's very straightforward. Modern bands like the Clientele sound like this. It's just a little bit out of place. The vocal is delivered so straight. It's just like a Small Faces pastiche. I don't know what track 11 is, but it's got great drumming. I do know track 12 is Nighttime. Another thing that Big Star do very, very well is plaintive ballads, acoustic-y ballads, or ballads with strings or pianos. And Nighttime is lovely. It is the only point on the album where I think that number one saddest album of all time rings true. It's a song that seems lyrically a little bit like Everybody's Talking. It's a song about complete isolation and separation from the rest of humanity. Walking along at night in the freezing cold. I'm walking down a freezing street. Scarf goes out behind. And just having no connection with other people. It's so lovely though. And the phasing lead guitar and strings. Get me out of here, get me out of here. I hate it here, I hate it here. Beautiful song, and that's the start of 4 ballads in a row. Blue Moon is maybe even lovelier, achingly romantic. Alex Chilton was a terrific singer. His voice is often broken and beaten and dejected on this album, but he was a really, really good singer. And the trio of ballads is Take Care, another just beautiful. This time a waltz with strings. Take Care, and these lyrics. In fact, these 3 ballads are the sadness. This is where I can understand people saying it's a sad album. Take care not to hurt yourself. Beware of the need for help. You might need too much. It's almost like the flip side to Thank You Friends, which is, that bitter, acidic, sneering sarcasm. This one is almost like, I'm just broken and I just want to tell you, just don't. It's beautiful. Now, the fourth ballad in a row is actually very, very interesting because it's a cover version of a song called Nature Boy, which might have even won an Oscar. I think it was from a film in the 1940s called The Boy with the Green Hair. I think it's been covered by 100 people, including, I think, Nat King Cole. And it's the only song that's delivered with the sparseness, the piano ballad sparseness of Holocaust. And it makes a nice counterpoint to Holocaust in that it's almost a version of that with hope installed in it. I think it ends with, the greatest thing that you can learn is to love and be loved in return, which is very optimistic, but it's very sparse and beautiful. And then they have another one. So we're now into non-canon tracks where they're probably additional tracks. The Kinks, I can't remember what the song is, but it's a great cover. It's a raucous straight through cover. And it works because I think, the Kinks and the Small Faces were almost ground zero for that kind of power pop. Dream Lover, track 17, coming to the end. I do not understand how this beautiful ballad, perhaps the only other song on the album that's got this washed out, sinking through the floor feeling, but much more romantic, as Black Car did earlier in the album. It's just ghostly and beautiful, not like a Tom Waits ghostly. And the lead guitar in this one, the embellishments are stunning. I don't know how this one isn't canon. This doesn't appear on many of the versions of Big Star, but it's one of the strongest tracks. And another entire universe of music is, see if I can get the title for this one. Because I was very surprised. I think it's called Downs, and it sounds like Tom Waits on Selfish Trombones or Rain Dogs. It's got that calamitous, anarchic percussion. I don't know where the hell that song came from. And another song I'd leave off the album is the Great Balls of Fire cover at the end. The band play brilliantly, but it's just got that and the Jodie Stevens songs are probably the only two out of the 19 that I would remove, because they don't really exist in the same universe as the rest of the album. But I've listened to this album for 30 years and I just wanted to review it. And I do think that, Big Star's influence, possibly second to the Velvet Underground in alternative guitar music, is fairly unknown. I think a lot of people, if you were born anything like approaching this century, you might just have no idea who they are. He passed away, Alex Chilton, in 2010. I think Jodie Stevens is still alive. He'll be getting on now. And they were playing festivals together, but this famously down album is a kaleidoscope of dark images and emotions and incredible songwriting and anarchic delivery that is deliberately politically slapdash at times, particularly like often when they end the songs, they're just like, an amazing masterpiece. So Big Star, third, Sister Lovers, a 10 out of 10.